When I was training, I didn't have a period for 7 years. What I was doing probably wasn't sustainable. I preferred basic training over treatment for the eating disorder. Getting my butt kicked, the lack of sleep. And in Tokyo, I literally walked into the dining hall and I almost started crying. I was so overwhelmed with all the amount of food. The first thing I could think of at the Olympics walking into there was, I'm gonna get fat.
Tell me who you are and how did you get to where you are now?
My name is Sammy Schultz. I am an Olympian in the sport of modern pentathlon, 7-time U.S. national champion, and I'm a personal trainer, coach, yoga, and Pilates instructor as well.
How did you become an Olympian?
Oh, that was a journey for sure. So I competed in the sport of modern pentathlon. It's fencing, swimming, horseback riding, running, and shooting. So it's actually one of the original Olympic sports. So it has a lot of history in it. And I did not learn about the sport until I was about 18. But growing up, I just did a lot of different sports, different events. And that kind of background of being a multi-sport athlete just led me into finding the sport of pentathlon. So in high school, I was doing cross country, track, swimming. I also, at some point, started horseback riding. The first thing I ever did was skiing. My parents had me on skis the day before I was 2. So we were just a very active family, and it was kind of natural to try a lot of different things. And so in high school, when I got into cross country and track, I just fell in love with running, but I didn't want to stop swimming, and I still loved horses. I also grew up hunting, so I had the shooting. So there's 4 out of the 5, but this whole entire time, I had no idea that the sport of pentathlon even existed. And fencing, it really isn't something you find in Colorado. So when I found out about the sport and my parents had met someone through horseback riding, her daughter did pentathlon. And so they just kind of started to get to talking, and they basically were like, you need to be doing this. You have the perfect background for this. So my senior year of high school, I learned how to fence, came to the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, did a camp, and just kind of got my foot in the door. So, that's just kind of the beginning of the story of how I found the sport, or I guess it found me.
So you said you did a lot of sports, and were your parents athletes as well?
They're athletic. My dad and my mom did triathlons at some point when they were younger. I know I've seen pictures of it. My dad definitely they skied together. They did a lot of activities together. So, but they weren't really like collegiate level or Olympic level athletes. They just did it for fun, and it was a part of something they did. And then they just brought us, my sister and I, into it when we were little.
To those of us who don't know, how exactly do you get to the Olympics as a pentathlete?
So the Olympic selection for pentathlon is a little bit different. We don't specifically have one trials like swimming or track and field does. It's kind of like a year-long process for us. So there's a lot of qualification events. There is Pan American Games, which if you place in the top 3, you have an automatic qualification. And I say automatic, there is still kind of like a clause in that where you still have to be ranked top 2 in the US in the world ranking system. So you still have to continue to compete internationally within that year to continue to keep your ranking points up. Otherwise, 2 other US females could surpass you in those ranking points. And essentially 36 athletes from around the world, up to 2 per country, are allowed to compete in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. So what was the most difficult one for you to learn besides fencing, I guess?
I would say, fencing definitely is so different from everything. The shooting and running, I think I had that background with shooting, but being able to work on that together to be able to almost separate the run and the shoot. So it's like and that's something too that's very unique about the sport is the running and shooting event is combined, kind of like a biathlon. So you have a station where you're set up to shoot. You go run 800 meters, come in, you shoot. You have to have 5 hits. And then once you have those 5 hits, you put the gun down and you go and do another lap of running. So you do 4 total laps of 800 meters and then 4 total rounds of shooting where you have to have 20 hits on the target.
That's a long sport. Yeah. That's a long event. And you gotta do they teach you some tricks on how to lower your heart rate when you get to the gun?
Not necessarily how to lower your heart rate. I do slow down a little bit, like when I come into the shooting range and kind of shake my arm out, try and get relaxed. But a lot of it is like just kind of shooting with that rhythm and shooting almost like with your breath. So I'm breathing in, take a shot, and try to come down. So it's almost like you just have to get really good at like on breathing and shooting under pressure.
Yeah, you were a soldier. You were a soldier too, right? Like,
Yes.
because you had that background. You went to the range a lot. I'm guessing that helped.
Yes, I did. Having the background in shooting and just growing up around guns, having that respect. It's like every time you shoot a different gun, it's going to be different. But I think having that background of shooting under pressure definitely helped me in the military. And then all that military training that I did with the flip up targets and all of that, even though it was a different gun, it was almost like I enjoyed more of that stressful experience because I think I thrived under that with the sport of pentathlon.
I don't know much about it, but do they use lasers?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was switched over in about 2012. We used to shoot little pellets, and then that got switched over to laser pistols in 2012, just so that we could be in a stadium full of people.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about ammunition. I mean, when you're breathing super heavy and you have this tiny little pellet that you're trying to load into your pistol, it's very hard. And I think it also made it quicker. So for people watching the sport, it kind of makes it more exciting, more relevant, even though, and I've been at the Olympic Museum and I brought the laser pistols for people to use and they love it. And they're like, this is actually harder than it seems. So it's not, I don't think it necessarily makes it easier, but it makes it easier for training, at least for us, training, travel, all that stuff. And I think a lot more kids are able to get into the sport knowing that they're shooting a laser pistol rather than real live ammunition.
Is there a recoil to it? Is there like, no? Yeah, that's interesting then.
It's just like a little beep that goes off in this laser. So it's very like uneventful. But the like how fast a lot of these athletes are shooting and doing it, that's like what's so exciting is I mean, people are shooting off five hits in a row within 6 to 7 seconds, which is so fast.
Did you use the glasses? Did you wear
No,
glasses?
I did not. Yeah. A lot of people do just to help them with like closing one eye. But for me, it was, I mean, sometimes I'd wear sunglasses just to help block the sun or wear a hat to kind of help keep me, because you're shooting and you can see everyone's target. So you can see what your opponents are shooting next to you. And if they're shooting and they get a hit, their light's turning green. And so if you really don't focus on your specific shooting, and you're like, oh, I need to run next. It's like, no, I have to stay focused on that shooting right now. This is where I am. So it's like very training that mental skill of like really being able to focus in on that one specific thing because it's very easy to get distracted.
Yeah. Last question on this. Give us an idea of how long the weeks are for training.
Oh, yes. The weeks are, I mean, and I loved it because I got to do so many different things.
Yeah.
But it is a lot. So I'd say probably like a typical Monday was like a morning swim. You go off to fencing practice, you'll have something before to eat, something in between to eat as a snack. After fencing, go home, have lunch, get a little bit of a break, have strength and conditioning, and then go and do a run in the afternoon. And then Tuesday, maybe doing a hard run out on the track with maybe some shooting involved. So there'd be different days where we just do shooting or just do running or do a little bit of combined. And then followed by an easy swim and then doing fencing lessons and maybe just some like rehab or stretching or things in the afternoon. And so that's essentially every day you're doing anywhere from 3 to 5 workouts, depending on kind of what you have for that day. It really depends on what the strength and weakness is for the athlete. So I was doing a little bit more fencing work because that was my weakness coming in. And then running and swimming for me was more maintenance. I mean, there's always room for improvement with those. So it's just kind of finding that balance. And that's the hard thing with the sport is it's easy to overtrain. It's easy to do a lot. And for coaches to kind of lump you into, this is what this athlete needs. This is what this athlete needs. So I think just building that over time, you have to adapt and communicate with your coaches to say like, hey, I'm really tired. And that's hard because you're like, a lot of it is you're just trying to train and get the most you can out of every day and every week and every practice.
Were you tracking your performance or you were using like a Garmin or something like that to see how overtrained you are or if your HRV tanks and then you got a deload or something like that? Or is there a specific week where it's a planned deload?
Originally, when I first came into the sport, it was just kind of just try to keep up.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, like this kind of hurts, but I'm going to just try to push through because I want to prove to the coaches that I can do this. And there really wasn't, we had a lot of European coaches. So it's kind of like, just try to stick with the elite athletes and do what you can. There really wasn't a whole lot of tracking. I think if anything, it was just more tracking mileage or yardage just to make sure that, you're trying to hit what the coaches are telling you to do. But heart rate variability wasn't really something that I initially learned about when I came into the sport. It's something I know a lot more of now. And I started kind of tracking probably within the last like 2 or 3 years of my athletic career, but it wasn't really something that was, I guess, taught to us or something that was really acknowledged.
Yeah, that's funny because we were getting flack from the other sports in CrossFit and about CrossFit, like just going hard all the time. We were like that too. Like I remember around 2017, 2018, I mean, I was putting maybe like, I was doing 7 to 10 Metcons per week, like, and then just going hard all the time. And that was not just me. I mean, most of us everyone was doing it. And now we're like smarter now, there's like off season, there's periodization. Now we're like tracking our HRV. So the sport has gone, I mean, it's advanced a lot more. So for you though, I mean, how does in season and off season look like when it comes to training?
Yes. So there really isn't much of an off season in the sport of pentathlon. Majority of usually US qualifiers will start somewhere in December, and then world championships will end up being somewhere in August, September. So you really only have like maybe October or like end of September, October is kind of like a downtime. So usually our coaches would say like, go off and have about like 2 weeks easy, and then we'll start to kind of build back in. But even then it was kind of like, oh, I need to keep training, or I need to keep maintaining things. So there really wasn't much of an off season. If anything, it was kind of maybe after your last competition, go and do a trip or spend some time with family, go do things like that, or go do more activities that you enjoy. And I think I got better about that as I went through the years as an athlete. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I probably went into the field of personal training, was because over these years, I was like, things just kind of felt like I was getting burnt out. I was tired. I was getting hurt. I was injured. And it's like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Or what do I need to change? And so just kind of trying to take that, and it's like, okay, doing that periodization where it's like build up for 3 weeks, take an easy week, or build up for 5 weeks, take an easy week, kind of trying to add that in, because you really don't have much of an off season. So you kind of have to find those weeks where you do get some recovery or some reprieve from all of the mileage or the yardage or all that pounding that you're doing.
Did some of your friends voice that kind of problem as well, like the overtraining part, or just like, just going hard all the time?
I think all of us, it was just so normal. We're like, we're just tired. We're like, we're exhausted. It was kind of just, oh, it's normal. You're a pentathlete. You're a multi-sport athlete. This is normal. And it's like, is it though? Like for me to feel like I really can't push. And there was times when we do like lactate testing or different testing, and looking back on those tests, it's like, I really wasn't, my lactate never reached a high level, and I cleared it really quick. So they're like, oh, you're really fit. You're really in shape. But then looking back at that, it's like, I probably wasn't even able to push myself hard enough, because either I wasn't fueling correctly, B, I was just too tired and fatigued to even be able to push harder for my body to reach that peak lactate. So there's a lot of different things of like, we were doing different testing, but it wasn't really, it's so hard and it's so different for every athlete. And knowing that now, it's looking back, it's like, it's so hard to work with an entire team, but you really can personalize things. And I think that is just something that a lot of coaches, I think, that work with teams, they have to work and develop, because it can be hard.
Were you guys following a template where did the coach have a base program and then tweaked it a little bit based on your performance or your time or stuff like that? Or was it just, all right, here's the program for everyone, just do it?
Usually when I first came into the sport, it was, this is the program that everyone's doing. Maybe women would be a little bit different than men, or you're going to do an extra shooting workout because, your last performance, you kind of had, you need a little bit more work in shooting, or you need a little bit more work in fencing. So it kind of, for more of those skill things, that would be kind of a little bit changed and adjusted. But for the most part, it was like one set in stone program that all of us followed.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing the skill part, I mean, it's probably mentally fatiguing because you guys spend a lot of time doing it, but it's probably physically probably not too bad, or manageable. I'm guessing. I'm just a mere mortal, so I'm just I don't know. I'm just guessing. So, how about strength training? You briefly mentioned about strength training. What are some of the qualities of strength continuum do you focus on when it comes to that part?
When I first started the sport, I really didn't get into, or I guess I wasn't strength training probably as much because I was doing so much other things. And I was like, oh, that's the first thing to go. Like, I need to work on all these other things. And I noticed first thing that happened was injuries happened over and over again. And I felt like I was maybe getting more fit, but I wasn't as strong. So things like fencing, I didn't have as much power. Like in the pool, I wasn't as powerful and explosive. So I definitely had more of that endurance background, and I am like a metronome. Like I can hit the same splits over and over and over again. And I kept kind of noticing that. And it was like, I started working with a coach in the gym at the training center, and he was like, let's try to work on some of this power and explosiveness. And he pushed us hard in the gym. So it was like, I was always sore, and I think it might've been a little bit too much, but also at the same time, I learned a lot. And I've had a lot of different coaches since then, kind of focusing on different things. They try to kind of incorporate things to see how they work. And that's a part of it. It's like, as much as you want this like textbook program to be like, this is going to make me the best pentathlete, it really is so different, and you have to change and adjust. And for me as an athlete, that was hard because I'm like, I could just do the same thing over and over and over again. But the power and explosive work for me was probably the most challenging because it was harder for me. And so that was an area where I tried to really focus more on like the quickness, being able to really, it's like I could get off the blocks super fast in swimming, but when it came to fencing, of like kind of shutting my brain off. And so some of that was also the mental aspect of it too, of trying to tie that in with your training. And that's kind of where it just comes with that communication as a coach, and every athlete's so unique and so different. And so being able to have certain coaches in the gym that were separate from our pentathlon coaches that still knew the sport, but could kind of tie into their background as a strength and conditioning coach and lifting to not overload us. Like we don't really need to be doing super huge, powerful, explosive deadlifts. There might be a time in a season for that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, let's focus on injury prevention too, because that's a big thing for someone like me who's doing a lot of training. Yeah,
because that's 5 different sports. And I'm guessing it would be a little bit tricky to program with for strength for that one. So I'm guessing if I was a coach, I'd probably be talking to your a coach too, to your pentathlete coach. And I think there's going to have to be like a tight communication. Do you remember how they periodized things over there for the strength?
I want to say that it was probably either like a 3 weeks hard, and then kind of a week of deload. So we'd build through those 3 weeks, deload, either 3 to 4, kind of depending on where I was at in the season or how it kind of fell with competitions. And that's kind of where we ended up being at like the end of my career of leading up to Tokyo, is like that seemed to be working best for me, of having a little bit of that recovery week. And sometimes I wasn't the best at listening to my coaches. They're like, all right, just go out and run 5 miles today. And it's like, I'll do 6. So a part of that was like me being stubborn as an athlete. But a lot of times it's like, if I'm feeling good enough to do another mile, then that's probably good. But just learning how to listen to that. And that seemed to be something that worked best, to be able to get the most bang for my buck, just because the season is so long and you don't really get those recovery periods. And then training through COVID too, we had all the gym closures, all these other things that are thrown at you. So you're really trying to focus on what are the things I can control, what's in my ability for what I'm able to do right now.
Yeah, that said, let's transition to mental programming. So even though you said you were having, it felt like you were overtraining, you were tired all the time. What were the things that were going through your head to help you get through those struggles?
Oh man, what was going through my head? I think the initial thought on a lot of things was, oh my goodness, I'm going to fail at this. I think that initial fear of failure is, especially as a younger athlete, and I think when you are younger, I mean, I got into the sport when I was 18 and it's everything to you. All you want to do is impress the coach, or at least for me, I wanted to impress the coaches, prove I deserved to be there and get to an Olympic team. And so you're just like, I'm going to do anything and everything I can. And so it was like, oh, I failed at that workout. And it's like, it felt like it was everything to me. And I think a part of me, I had to realize that I had other aspects of myself. So I started going to school part-time. I had to kind of start, and even though that made me busy, I think it also helped me to distribute some of that energy into other areas of my life that I also had skills in, and I could develop those skills in other areas. Because it is like you put all your eggs in one basket. Of course, if that basket falls and all those eggs break, it's going to be devastating. And so, but knowing that I kind of had that second basket or other things to work on, and being a multi-sport athlete, it's like, well, if one workout today went poorly, I still got 4 other ones that I can work on. So kind of having that mentality that just because everyone else's strengths might be here, that's not mine. And I'm going to work at it. I'm going to work at it. And I think I had that mentality even as a younger athlete. I wasn't in high school. I wasn't some superstar athlete that was breaking records. I just worked really hard and I made improvements every season. I built up, I kept working hard, I kept showing up. And I think that was the biggest thing, just remembering that of like, I'm showing up, I'm trying my best. And that was, I think, the biggest thing for me is like, I'm not going to give up. And so just having that mentality in the back of my head made me a very resilient, maybe a stubborn athlete at times. And then I think over time, just developing more of that mentality of this isn't everything. It's okay. Kind of relax a little bit into this. There is a bigger picture. There's always tomorrow. There's the next workout.
So is it kind of like that drive? You know how most people say they hate losing more than winning? Was that you? Or was it something else?
I wouldn't say that I was a super competitive athlete. I was at least competitive with other people. I was more competitive with myself. So I wanted to improve and get faster times and do this. And like, yes, I was competitive, but I think when people think of an Olympian, they're like, oh my gosh, you must be so competitive and always want to win. And I don't feel like I was that kind of athlete, which at times I was like, is something wrong with me that I'm not super competitive? But I think it was just like, I had more of that internal drive that I want this. Like, even if that person next to me might be a little bit better, it's like, all right, I'm just going to try to stay on their feet, or I'm going to try to just keep up with them. Even if I can't beat them, I'm just going to try my best to like stick with them. So maybe it wasn't necessarily like, I need to beat this person. It was just, how can I improve myself?
Yeah, it's like, that's actually pretty good to hear, because there are some of us who think, oh, we just gotta want to murder the workout today, especially for guys too. We're mostly like that, but like just thinking, okay, we'll just, a little bit of improvement here and there, and I'm competing against myself. I think that's enough, and be satisfied with that and not putting too much pressure on yourself to perform and, outlift or outrun the person next to you.
Yeah. And that, I think the pressure, a lot of that, it's like sometimes you need that pressure and it's good, but then there's other times where that pressure can be detrimental, because it's like, if I'm fencing and I'm tense, I'm not going to be able to move as loosely. Same thing with running and swimming. It's like, or if I'm riding a horse, that horse can feel that tension. So being able to like use that, yeah, I'm anxious or I'm nervous. It's like, but I can turn that energy into something that's going to be more useful rather than just draining my energy or taking away from. It's like, that's not going to make me swim any faster if my shoulders are up by my ears. I have to be relaxed. I have to stay in that like that flow or Zen zone, flow state.
Flow state.
Yeah. Which is like every athlete's dream. You're like, I need to be in that flow state. And it's like, sometimes it's the hardest thing to replicate, but it's like, you have those little things, like the mental things. It's like, you stay within what you can control. I can control what food and drinks that I bring to fuel myself throughout my workouts. I can't control what the weather's like that day or what opponents I have coming up, beside me or next to me, but I can control my mental ability within that state. And so just trying to kind of focus on those aspects too.
Easier said than done, though.
Oh, yeah.
Easier said than done. Do you have tricks? Because I can tell an athlete, say, relax. That's not going to happen when you're at a world stage or even at like a normal competition if it's your first time. How do you have any tricks that you can that you can share to people to actually relax?
I would say, and this kind of might sound like some people may not like this, but I felt like yoga was very helpful for me as far as coming into my breath. So I was the alternate for the 2016 Rio Olympic team, and I qualified. However, I was ranked third in the US. And so I got bumped. And that was really, really challenging for me as an athlete. And I had to learn how, I was like, I need to change something. I felt like I was putting too much pressure on myself. And so I started doing yoga, and it was like, okay, I'm just going to stretch. For me, it was more of a form of working out. But I started to realize, I was like, I'm a little uncomfortable in this pose, but if I can breathe into it, it gets a little bit easier. And so I could kind of tie that in. And I feel like that mentally helped me a little bit, and just helped me kind of come more into my breath and body, because sitting there meditating, I was like, I cannot do this. I'm too much, like, I need to move. And I'm sure that's something that I can practice over the years of being able to sit in that stillness. But in that moment in time, just learning how to breathe kind of even in those discomfort periods. And like I said, much easier said than done, but I do feel like that helps a lot of just remembering to breathe first off, taking those deep breaths. Cause it's like, when you exhale, you automatically, it's like your shoulders come down away from your ears. So being able to like kind of take that deep breath, almost take a step back from things and pause. And granted, like when I was in the middle of a competition, I had such a hard time with that, especially in fencing. If you start losing, or in swimming, it's like if your goggle fills up with water. So, I mean, really just training that. And it's like knowing I've put in so much work over time. I need to trust myself. I need to trust my training, trust my body, know that it knows what to do. I mean, I put in hours and hours and hours of work. So trying to really believe in that. And I did struggle with that as an athlete. I wouldn't say that I was probably the most confident person. And there's so many things I look back on my career and I was like, oh, I wish I would have done that differently. But I mean, you learn and you grow, and it's kind of one of those things I think that allowed me to come into what I'm doing now and be able to learn and grow to help other people, because it's like you look back and you're like, oh, I wish I would have done so many things differently, but you can't, and that's hindsight, but you learn and you grow.
Yeah, I did. I still meditate. I think to date I have about 10,000 minutes.
Wow.
The cool thing about it, I think it's similar to yoga, but the cool thing about it is that when you breathe, or when you're meditating, your thoughts come to mind. They just appear. And sometimes they come with emotions. And when you're breathing and you're just saying, oh, that's a thought, you're learning, or you're practicing to detach yourself from detach the emotions from the thoughts, so that when you're competing, sometimes when you're freaking out, you're like, I'm getting behind. Well, okay, so what? Then just keep that pace up, and then you'll be fine. Yeah. So that's the one thing that I like about meditation. I mean, it used to be this woo thing for me, because like the old what's it called, the guided meditations, they were like, be one with nature, align your chakra. So I was like, what the heck are you talking about? But like, when the science came out, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. But I want to explore yoga now. So,
and I think it's finding what works for you, because it was like, for me, meditation was very hard. I'm sure I could find something where I might be able to meditate better now, but in that moment, it was like yoga was a very good fit for me to be able to do that. And so finding something that works for you, and it's that trial and error, which is hard, because a lot of times it's like, this is kind of working now. I'm worried to kind of get out of that comfort zone to try something new, or to try this or try that. And that was something I struggled with as an athlete. And I think I was afraid to do different things, whether that was a fear of getting hurt, fear of failure. And I mean, change is hard, but it's one thing in life that it's like, that's consistent. Things are always going to be changing. Your body, you're getting older, so you can't train the same way you did even 2 years ago or a year ago. And I think learning that too, as I got older as an athlete, it's like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could do what I did when I was 18.
Well, you already talked about this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So since you're a 7 times U.S. national champion, how did it feel to podium 7 times?
Oh my gosh, it was, and I think every time it's special or different, just because every event in pentathlon, I feel like every just competition in pentathlon is different, because you have 5 different events. You're usually in a different place. You have a different horse. That is one thing. That's a catch with pentathlon. it's a random draw. So you are given a horse that you don't know most of the time. I mean, when we're competing on our own home soil, usually we know majority of the horses, but for the most part, when you go to a foreign country, you don't know the horse. You get 20 minutes to warm up with it, and then you have to complete the course to the best of your ability.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so every event is different. And so I think there's been times where I usually come from behind, and to be able to come from behind and then still cross that finish line, either in the lead and look back and say, I did this really good today, or I need to improve on this. There's just a sense of pride in it, and knowing that you're standing on top of that podium, even if you are competing against people from your own country for those, it's like, I'm still working hard. I'm still proving myself to be here. Usually my family was there for most of them. And then just winning that 7th one before going to the Olympics, that was special. My godmother came to that. Just my dad was there, just different people, my husband. So all these different things of like being able to share those memories with other people too. I mean, I've had my grandparents who are no longer here, who were at, I think, my first nationals that I got bronze at. And looking back at those pictures, it's like they were there for that moment. And that's really cool. That support system means everything to me and really helped me through my journey. So I think just being able to share that with them is also really special.
So how about for the competitions where you lost? Were you devastated, or was it like, moving on, next competition?
Definitely disappointed. I've had a lot of competitions where I've walked away and just been like, I feel like I just either embarrassed, devastated. I feel like my training didn't reflect the way I performed, and it's hard. And so I think there was a time and a place where I kind of had that time to sulk and be upset with myself, or be mad or be upset. And then it's like, okay, I don't have time necessarily. I mean, I need to sit here and evaluate maybe things that could go better, but I also can't sit here and let this impact my performance on my next event. So I think there's that. And growing as an athlete, it's being able to find kind of that balance of like, okay, here's areas I need to improve, but I also don't need to hang on to all this baggage of stuff that's going to bring me down for the next event. And I think that's something that I did a lot as a younger athlete, is carried a lot of that fear with me, or like, I don't want to feel that way, or that fear of failure. And it's like, I'm out here, I'm trying. My parents, my family, my friends, they're all going to love me, whether I come home with a win or a loss or whatever it is. And I think knowing that, once I kind of worked through, I started talking with therapists, sports psych, kind of working through other areas to where I could kind of change my mentality around what like a quote unquote failure meant to me. That really helped, because it kind of helped me a little bit like detach from me seeing myself as a failure, rather than me seeing like, well, just that event wasn't really the greatest performance.
What did failure mean to you back then anyway versus it now?
Back then, failure meant that like I wasn't working hard enough. It meant that I didn't deserve to be there. I think I took it so personal that it was like, what am I even doing? And even though I might have had good parts or good aspects of that event. And so now moving forward to, I think I took failure, like when I didn't qualify for Rio, it's like, where I was the alternate, I had to take that and be like, well, what can I do differently for this next time around? Because I do not ever want to feel this way again. I was so close, and like that was so hard. And I think a lot of that was I didn't do a lot of the mental training. I trained my butt off for everything. And I was like, you could count on me to be out there doing all the work, but it was like more the mental stuff that I don't think I was really focusing on. So I think that actually caused me to look a little bit more within me and seek out like not just a sports psych, but a therapist, and working through some of those things, just being more open about talking about some of the struggles that I felt personally. And that's very vulnerable as an athlete. But I think doing that with someone, I mean, I had a lot of male coaches, and so I think that were European. And so it's very hard to open up to them and feel that you can be vulnerable. And so I think having someone that was professional in that I could open up to and could give me tools was very helpful. So it's just kind of being able to have those resources, which not every athlete has that. And that's hard. But I do think that was like a transition for me to be able to kind of open up more and dive deeper into who I was, and just kind of break through some of those barriers.
So yoga, sports psych, controlling what you can control. Are there any other tactical mental programming that you can share that we can employ?
I always liked the quote, comparison is the thief of joy. I think a lot of athletes use that, or I've heard it stated a lot. And it's very easy to compare yourself to other athletes. And I think that that's where you kind of can get caught up. And I think that kind of falls similar into control what you can control as well, like focusing on your training. But a lot of that comparison, it's like whether you're comparing your body, what they're eating, what their training's like, how they're performing, it's a lot of that is just going to start to pull away from you if you get so distracted from all that stuff and aren't focusing on what you're doing. And so I think just being able, I wish I would have known that years before of like, don't compare yourself to the person you were yesterday, not necessarily to those competitors or your teammates.
Is that what your therapist told you, or did you like learn it on your own, or just like did you just stumble upon it on, let's say, Instagram or something?
I probably just stumbled upon it. I've always loved quotes and like inspirational messages. And so it might have been something I just saw pop up and I was like, ooh, I really like that. Yeah. And there's a couple, like I've always had a journal, and it was one of those things where I'd write down things of how that day went, or I'd log things of training and quotes and different things. I'd save quotes on the computer, on the phone, and just kind of mantras. I'd write them on my mirror. So different things like that, because I felt like I was a very visual person, and being able to look in the mirror and read that every morning, or look at my phone, or different things like that. And whether that's a Bible verse, a mantra, a quote, something like that. And it could be different every day. So I felt like that was something too that I just always kind of enjoyed. And so just kind of finding those little things of like, that one really resonated with me. I'm sure there's plenty more that I could also name off, but I think that one is probably the biggest one.
Do you remember any of the stuff that your therapist, like some of the advice, I don't know if you can even call it advice, or some tactics that they've shared that still stuck with you?
I would say building up a routine for yourself. Like that was a big thing, especially for sports psych, of building up that routine. So you have something, it's like, whether that's a specific warm up, and knowing that might have to be flexible based on that could get thrown off. And so I think it's that letting go of some of that rigidity and being a little bit flexible, but also having that routine. So that kind of fits into a little bit of like, I think controlling the things you can control, but also it's like every event is different for pentathlon. So having that routine of the way I warm up for one thing, it just kind of brought that sense of familiarity. Even if I'm in a new place, competing somewhere new, there's a lot of different things going on. It's like, all right, I'm going to focus on this warm up. I do the same thing. It feels familiar in an area that might not feel like there's high stress. There's everyone else doing their own thing. It's like, I'm going to stay in my zone. I know my warm up. I know my routine. I got this.
You have to warm up to at the beginning. I mean, when I used to compete, and it's like, it's the thing that kept me grounded. You know, it's like, all right, I can just, drown everything out and just do the warm up. And I don't know, it felt meditative to me. So it felt pretty good.
In between events for me too, it'd be sitting and just relaxing. Not necessarily like if I wanted to go watch other people compete, I could. But I think for me, it was like being able to create that space where it was like, I need to relax. I need to just sit back, kind of let myself chill to get ready for the next thing. And it's like, sometimes I needed that. Other times I didn't. I needed to kind of get more awake because I was jet lagged. Being able to have that flexibility and know it's like, and I think that just takes time to grow as an athlete, of what do you feel works best for you? What makes you feel more, maybe you need to be pumped up in that moment, or maybe you need a little bit more energy, or maybe you have too much and you need to kind of come down. So it's like having music. That was something too, of like being able to listen to music, listen to my breath, breathe, kind of find those different things where it's like, I liked this, I didn't like that, and trying to practice that stuff in training as much as I could, or say at like a nationals event, like that's a perfect time for me to practice a lot of those things. When I'm competing on a smaller stage, that pressure's still high, because I'm like, sometimes you're expected to win, because it's like, if you're a six-time national champion, you're kind of expected to win that next one. But then when you go, it's like, that's a good time for you to practice those things. And then when you go to a World Cup or a bigger stage and you're in a foreign country, you're jet lagged, having those things that you can kind of rely on, at least were helpful for me.
I feel like that's a really good stage too. I mean, that not a lot of people can, that not a lot of people are blessed to experience, because when you're there and it's like, it's a massive stage, right? And you were chosen to be there and you were like soaking it in, and you get to practice all the, you get to express the training, express all the strength that you've gained from training, and you were there. Not a lot of people experience that, How does competing internationally, how is it different from competing here in the US?
I mean, first off, you have a lot of the international travel. You're probably traveling overseas. So you have 8 hours, maybe different time zone. So you're dealing with jet lag. You're dealing with different food, public transportation or the transportation they're providing. You have to like pack your bags, bring snacks, bring all this stuff. So you're really like having to prepare a lot more. And also you're competing against a lot more people, say from Europe or other countries that are very strong. I know I wouldn't say that US is the strongest with pentathlon because it's not really a sport that everyone knows about. And so there's not a lot of collegiate opportunities. And so the sport just hasn't grown as much in the US, say, as it has in Europe. So I think that's a part of it too, is like, there's a little bit of that, oh my gosh, these athletes have been doing this so much longer. They have more experience. They're also not dealing with the 8 hours of jet lag or time change that you have. They've flown, maybe an hour to get there. So you're kind of just in that different zone. But at the same time, it's really cool to be able to compete against all these people from all over the world. And you start to kind of recognize and see these people, make friends with them. So it does become kind of fun to see these people and they become your friends. Even though you're competing against them, you're around them for a week, if not more, because a lot of times the competitions would be maybe 2 weeks apart. So we'd try to find training camps in Europe so that we could stay and not have to fly back home between everyone. And so having that opportunity to also train with other people from other countries, as hard as that is, because you're being taken out of your element, it's like your food's different, your housing arrangement, you're away from maybe family, spouse, friends, all that stuff. But it kind of allows you to focus on just training and get used to that time change. Also just a different training environment, being able to train with different people.
So Jackie Black, she's in weightlifting, and she's a Hall of Famer in USA weightlifting. And she said that when they traveled to a different country, they weren't allowed to eat any other food besides what they're provided. Was it like that with you?
Not necessarily for us. They usually, when we stay at a hotel, they kind of have like a breakfast they provide. They'll do like snack lunch boxes and then dinners. So usually it's kind of buffet style. They'd have still like proteins, carbs, fruits, veggies. Some places were better than others. I remember one year in Italy, it was like, we literally were given salami and bread in the morning. I'm like, okay, we're going to need more than this. Let's go to the store. Let's try to find other things. So now, or I guess when I as I grew as an athlete, I would start to bring like oatmeal packs or protein, electrolytes, different things where I was like, I know I'm not going to be able to find maybe the same brand that I know works for me. So being able to kind of plan for that, bring protein bars, different things like that. But for the most part, they did a pretty good job of providing a good breakfast and dinner. Lunch was always kind of a toss up. You'd like probably open up like this massive piece of bread and you're like, okay, there's like a slab of lettuce and cheese. Great. I'm not going to eat this. And I think too, like there's certain places, like if you I know when we went to Mexico, they were like, don't eat the meat because it could potentially be tainted with stuff. So avoid that. You can still have like chicken or fish. Also like probably avoid lettuce. Just, it's kind of like proceed with caution when you go to certain places. But for the most part, we started kind of going to the same places after a couple years. So you'd stay at the same hotels and you're like, okay, I've been here before. I know what they usually have. May not be my top pick, but if it doesn't work out, I can go try to find a restaurant down the street or figure something out.
Yeah, Jackie said the reason why they did that was because if something happened to the athletes, they can petition it, so they can't blame anyone that
Yeah.
if they went out somewhere and then they got sick, they can't blame the committee. That's why they did it.
Yeah.
So when
Definitely wouldn't go eat like street food. Like, like you're in Japan, like, let's go get some sushi and street food. Like, I think that's definitely trying to find, like, making sure you kind of stay within that realm of what you know works best. But at the same time, you also don't, like, I mean, the same thing here. I could go out to eat dinner here the night before a competition. I probably wouldn't go out, but I mean, stuff happens and that's unfortunate, but it's kind of like, all right, let's just try to control and eat what I know usually works for me.
Yeah, when I went to Penpax, because like I covered some of I covered USA swimming back then. The food was amazing. Oh my gosh!
And swimmers can eat.
Yeah, swimmers. Yeah, I got to eat what they ate in the hotel, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it was amazing. Holy crap! Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, that being said, we talk about food. You mentioned offline that you weren't eating enough for your training. Can you talk more about that?
Yes. So I think during my training, there was a lot of times where I think, as any female in sport, or probably any male or female in sport, if you're in a swimsuit or you're in some kind of performance where, you know, you're seeing other athletes' bodies, there's that you're comparing yourself to them, or maybe you're seeing what they look like, even though everybody's different. And I think a lot for me, I had heard, I mean, when I was 18 and I came into the sport, I was definitely overtraining, but I gained weight and my coaches told me that I was too fat and I needed to lose weight. So that was kind of my first time of coming into the sport, of being told, oh, if I lost weight, I would run faster, I'd perform better. And any female hearing that, that's hard. And so I think that for me, it was like, okay, if I pay more attention to what I eat, if I maybe eat better, eat less, I'll lose weight and I'll perform better. So then it was like, they told me I was injured because I weighed too much, and then I lost a bunch of weight really quick. I got injured because of that. So it's hard to know, like, chicken or the egg, but that was kind of the first year in sport that I kind of really experienced, I think, issues or being told that I didn't look a certain way for what I needed to be doing. And that's hard to hear, especially as an 18-year-old. And so I think just over time, it was like, I need to pay attention to what I eat. It's really important for me to put good things into my body. And I think I got a little bit too obsessive with that. And as the years went on, it just got more and more and more restrictive, more strict, more regimented. And then COVID came around, and I think the lack of control that I felt that I had with training in the world, that's when I really started finding myself measuring food, trying to control everything of what I ate. I had no room to go out. I didn't want to, like, there was no room. Like, I would still eat treats and things like that, but it was very, very minimal. And a lot of stuff my husband at the time started to kind of notice, just because we were in close quarters. He was around me all the time. And he's like, you're eating the same thing. You're always measuring your food. Are you sure? You know, it kind of was like, I attributed it to, I'm doing this because my training. And once I got done with the Olympics in Tokyo, and in Tokyo, I literally walked into the dining hall and I almost started crying. I was so overwhelmed with all the amount of food. The first thing I could think of at the Olympics walking into there was, I'm going to get fat. And that's so, like, devastating. I'm at the Olympics. I should be excited. And my first thing was, like, I was so fearful of what that food was going to do to my body, rather than I need to eat to perform so I can perform best on the biggest stage. And I think looking back and remembering that, it's like, that's so sad. And I wish that could have been different. And I don't think I really opened up enough about that to the team I was working with. And because I just said, it's a part of what I need to do for sport. It's a part of what I need to do. And then once the Olympics happened and I kind of took a little bit of a step back from training, I still had that need for control for food. I had to exercise. I had to, like, control everything about my food. And that's when it started to become more evident that, like, this isn't just because of the Olympics. This is probably something that's more underlying that needs to be addressed in a bigger way, that I had just been kind of shoving under the rug and justifying. And so it was kind of, I started working with a therapist who was specialized in eating disorders. And I think just having her point out some things to me of like, this really isn't normal. The amount of time that you're being consumed by the food you eat, your exercise. Like I couldn't even go out to eat without like having almost an anxiety attack, and not like, I was like, what are they cooking with? Like, I had to control everything. And it's like, that's no way to live. So I think it would have been about 2 years ago, probably a year or two after I retired from sport, I went into treatment for an eating disorder. I kind of was like, I felt that I was trying to make these changes, but I had to change that environment. I was like, I'm not going to stop working out. I'm not going to stop. I'd made little changes, but I think for me, I needed someone to be there to hold me accountable to make those drastic changes. So I went to a treatment facility in Denver that had a specialty care clinic that had a specific group for athletes. And so I figured that would be really good to have someone to focus a little bit on not just the eating side of things, but also like the workouts and the athletic side of things. And like my meaning, everything was like, I was tied into being an Olympian, even though I had still all these other aspects of being a soldier, a wife, a daughter, a sister. I still was like only identifying with that. And I had to kind of learn how to let go and not lose control, but let go of some of that control and be able to like let myself live. Also to have a family and to have a life that wasn't so like strict and regimented. It's like that, it just became too rigid.
Walk us through the healing process. How long did it take? What did you do? I mean, how hard was it from the beginning and so on?
So, oh man, going into treatment, I think we were driving down to Denver and my husband is taking me and I'm like, turn around. I was like, take me back. I don't want to go. I don't want to do this. I was so nervous. And I think a part of that was because I knew, I was like, I'm going to have to eat whatever they give me. I'm not going to be able to work out. Literally, I'm losing control of everything. And it kind of felt like I was almost going back to basic training, that like nervousness of like, I don't know what to expect. And I would say I preferred basic training over treatment for the eating disorder, like getting my butt kicked, the lack of sleep. Cause it was like, to me, it was just more, it was easier for me to push myself in that way than it was for me to talk about my feelings, than it was for me to literally let someone else just be like, no, you can't go work out. You have to sit here in this discomfort. You need to eat this, teaching me about like just different skills, different things, whether it's the way I talk to myself, the way I view myself, being in groups, being around other people that are also struggling, which can be helpful and hurtful in some ways. But I think just that process, it's like every week was kind of set up. You had different groups and different classes. You had to eat meals together with everyone. And even if it wasn't what you wanted, you were still expected to eat part of that, and challenging yourself with new foods, different foods that I was like, I will never eat that. And you're like, well, I have to challenge myself to eat that and sit in that discomfort. And I think a lot of it was just that mental, as an athlete, I'm so used to pushing myself physically, but that mental aspect, I was like, this is exhausting. I'm so tired and I haven't worked out. And so that was just very different for me. And then you're also taken away from your family. Like you still have access to them, but like during the day, your phone is in a closet. So you don't really get to talk to them, which is good. It eliminates those distractions. And I was at treatment, intensive treatment. So I was even staying at a house with the other girls.
Oh, that intense.
There. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like full on, I was there 24/7, didn't get to go home. So I was there doing that for about 2 months. And then I transitioned and I was living at my parents for a little bit and they were in Denver. So I kind of got a little bit more freedom, started to be able to cook like maybe one meal a day for myself. And then you're still meeting with your nutritionist, your psych, you're doing all the groups. And then they kind of slowly transition you to like an outpatient program to where you're there. And then I think by the end of 4 months, I had transitioned out and was home. But like I started working part-time a little bit to try to transition back in, see how that felt. And of course, I'm like, you're noticing changes in your body too, because you're refueling your body and things like that. So you're also working through some of those physical changes, physical discomfort. But they also have personal trainers that work with you there, and coaches and different things. So being able to have someone to work with in that sense too was really, really neat, and to be able to learn and grow in different areas. Cause like, I was like, I want to be here also, not just for myself, but to help other people who are struggling through this. And I think every time I've had an injury as an athlete, or every time I've gone through something, I've tried to ask questions and learn and grow. And that's taken time as I've gone through life to be like, it's not dumb to ask a question. Like, ask these questions, learn, grow. And I think utilizing that, because it's like, I'm in this profession as a personal trainer, and I know I'm going to come across this. And I kind of felt like a fraud in some ways, knowing that I was going through this struggle with my eating disorder and helping other people. And I think I wanted to know that I was in a better place myself so that I could help those people better. Because I was like, I was telling them things and I was like, I'm not even doing this myself.
It feels like it gives you clout though when you go through that, and then you actually went through treatment. I thought it was just like, 1 hour therapy or 30-minute therapy every once in a while. That's that intense. But when you're someone who actually experienced it, I think it gives you more credibility, and whatever you're saying is way more powerful compared to like someone like me who's just giving advice, right? And if that person is struggling, I think that's like, there's more weight to your advice.
Yeah. And I mean, anytime you've gone through something personally, I think it gives you a different perspective of it. And it's like, I think that's what makes coaching and personal training. It's like, all of us are different. All of us have different backgrounds. And I think that's what makes it so unique. Of like, I try to not take it personally. If maybe someone doesn't want to work with me, it's like, okay, I might just not be the right fit for them. And that's hard personally. But at the same time, it's like, they may find someone that is a better fit, or that has those things where they need something different, and I'm not able to give that to them. So I think it's kind of just being able to understand that and just say, I may be able to help someone out in a different way if they are struggling with certain stuff that maybe I went through. And if I don't know it, you research it, you figure it out. And that's a part of like the learning and growing. You're always trying to learn and grow. And that is something I think I wish I would have done as an athlete too, of like, try to be more open to change and learning and growing, and not being so regimented and strict, because it can be, over time, it can be exhausting.
You mentioned something about changes in your body when you started eating. For us guys, I mean, I can probably speak for most guys, is that when we go on a bulk and we're lifting, we're getting bigger. It's like, let's go, baby. And then we're just really excited. And when our shirts get smaller, it's like, all right, we like this. I'm guessing it wasn't like that for you.
No, it was definitely very uncomfortable. And I mean, you're being weighed every week when you're in there, sometimes multiple times a week. And granted, you can't see the scale, so you don't know. And that's a part of it, is being able to put that number aside. But even when you put that number aside, it's like, yeah, my clothes feel different. Things fit different. And that's really uncomfortable, knowing that your body's changing, but then also knowing it's like, what I was doing probably wasn't sustainable. When I was training, I didn't have a period for 7 years. And so knowing that I was married and I wanted to start a family, that was something too of like, I can't keep doing this at this level if I want to have this next chapter of my life. I have to change something. And as uncomfortable as that is, that might mean gaining weight and not exercising as much. And that's hard, because as a female, you're like, I don't want my clothes to feel tight on me. And I don't want to lose maybe some fitness or tone or physique, but there's kind of like, you have to find that time. And it's like, if your body's not functioning properly or something's not functioning properly, we need to look at that. We need to figure out what's going on. And for everyone, it's different. There's like red S, and it's not necessarily for females, but even men, it's going to impact you differently, whether it's your reproductive organs, or maybe it's your sleep or your hair or your nails. Like, it's going to affect everyone differently. And so it's hard to like look at this one thing and be like, well, that girl's skinnier than me, but she still has her period. It doesn't make sense. So it's all very different. And so I think they took kind of that female athlete triad, and now they're looking at the bigger picture of red S that's more applicable to men and women, and being able to say like, hey, this is kind of a little red flag in this big picture of things. Let's see if maybe we can adjust some of these other parts to get that back on board so that we're functioning at like a higher level.
Yeah, let's step back real quick. What's that red S? I mean, is that a framework?
Red S. So it's basically like an overtraining kind of, because they took the female athlete triad, and I think it was looking at sleep, food, and like female reproductive. And this would be something I'd probably have to look at again to see everything that falls. And they just kind of broke it down, and it kind of looks at the different aspects of training and recovery to say, like if you are overtraining, let's look at like kind of these boxes. Are you struggling with sleep? Are you having mood outbursts? Are you like, where's your testosterone levels, or where's your libido? Kind of looking at different factors like that. Okay, where's reproductive in that? If you're completely like dropped off, maybe that's a red flag. Or are you not able to push? Are you not even hungry at all? Are you starving all the time? So there's like a bunch of different things. So I'll have to look that up to like actually know. But it's kind of like, I think a little bit more on the side for endurance level athletes, because they are doing so much work in all, like doing so many miles or doing all this stuff, but it can still be applicable for, I think, any athlete.
Yeah, there's a guy named Paul Weber right now. I'm following. He has like 400 CrossFitters under his belt, and he does talk about that. It's like, if you're not sleeping well enough, your joints are aching, and then your libido's down. That 135 pounds feels heavier than usual. Like, you need to deload, or you need to take a break. It's not good. There's a competition coming up. You can sandbag it if you want to, but there's you got bigger competitions coming down the road. So yeah, I think overtraining is one of the things that needs to be talked about more, because it's not good for anyone.
And I think as fitness professionals, and you've probably seen this, it's like there's so many trends that come in and out. And so it's like, you don't want to just jump on the next bandwagon. You want to make sure, and everything's going to be so different for everyone. Like, what works for one athlete's not going to work for another. The way they train, because their lifestyle might be different. They may be a nurse that's on their feet all day. They might be someone who sits at a desk all day. So that's going to be very different in the form of like, what's their recovery like? And I mean, I'm not even just talking elite athletes. I'm talking about just recreational people who are just trying to work out every day. That's still going to impact them. Stress levels, sleep. And now it's like, there's all these things, heart rate variability, all these forms of recovery, red light therapy, cold plunge, sauna. I think there's so many different things out there that you can do to help, but also it's like, is that mentally helping you, or is it actually physically helping you? So I think as an athlete, that was kind of hard, because it's like, okay, is this actually helping me? And I still feel like that. Sometimes I'm like, okay, is that little piece of kinesio tape on my ankle helping me, or is it more just,
or is it placebo?
Yeah, is it just in my head kind of thing? Yeah. And so I think, there's so many different nuances and different routes you can go down as a coach and an athlete, whatever level you're at.
Yeah, let's take a tangent. I want to continue down this road about the eating disorder, but like you mentioned the kinesiology tape. Yeah. So there's a concept in, I think it's biking, where it's called aggregation of marginal gains, where they're looking for the 1% gain. The Kino tapes, 10 hours of sleep per night, which is actually, it feels excessive, but like they really have to do it. Shaving.
Yeah.
What are some of the 1% stuff that you had to do?
So actually, kinesio tape was not allowed in the swimming event. So you're not allowed to wear that in the swim, because that supposedly is allowed to, or supposed to give you more buoyancy in the water. So that is one thing that you're not allowed to do. But I will say shaving, I didn't really ever shave my arms. I was like, for the amount of time, or like trying to put on this super, super tight suit, I was like, the amount of energy I need to reserve for all my other events, I'm like, I'm not going to try to go with the smallest suit possible. Like, all right, let's go mid-size, because that's just so much effort to do that. So I think for me, it was like picking and choosing. I mean, I did wear compression socks for fencing. I felt like they were tighter. They fit better. Some of them were too tight. And so I was like, all right, let me try this. Let me try that. Finding just, and even the fencing kits, finding one that was breathable and not too heavy, because they're made out of Kevlar. So they're very heavy, and there's different brands. And so over time, as I got to be a better athlete, I was like, oh, I don't have to be like so hot and sweaty in this. So finding something that I felt more comfortable in. I mean, that even to me was a 1%, because it's like my arm doesn't feel as restricted when I'm trying to extend it. For running, it was always kind of different based on what kind of material you're on, because we could wear spikes. So you could attach spikes into your shoes. So it's like if I'm on grass or somewhere where I can wear them, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to put those in my shoes. So I'll get a little extra grip to be able to run faster. Horses is really just a toss up. But I also do feel it's like, you know, feeling comfortable and being in gear that you feel comfortable in and that fits you well, that I think was like important for me. And that's that 1%, because if you feel restricted, if you don't feel comfortable, you're automatically going to be more tense. And so I think that was something for me. It was like, what's going to be the most comfortable? What's going to help me focus? So I'm not worrying about, oh my gosh, this material on my shirt, or this and that. So that was something I feel like was helpful.
So sauna, ice bath, mushroom coffee, some of those weird stuff.
I actually do drink mushroom coffee now, but that's because
so good. Which one?
Rise.
Rise, yeah.
But that was actually something. So when I was in treatment, I wish they would have told me this before. You cannot have caffeine and you can't have coffee. So you could have decaf, but it just like lost all its taste for me. And so I started doing the mushroom coffee when I got back, and I was like, well, and then now that I'm pregnant, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, well, at least I'm not just like,
I'm like lion's mane, chaga, reishi, give me all that stuff.
There's so many different things. I will say that I did actually do some psilocybin microdosing.
Have you?
Yes.
Yeah, I need numbers.
Yes. And I did that as a part of kind of my recovery after treatment to try to help just some of my that rigidity. And I am a very like type A person. I like to have order, and I needed to kind of still find that ability to relax. And so I worked with someone on a part of that. And it's not, microdosing is something where you really don't feel any different. You can go about your day, you can do normal things. I did at one point want to go down like doing a whole journey with her, and being in a setting where you're monitored the whole time. But we never got to that point of being able to do that. But I mean, when I was an athlete, I feel like it was like cold plunge was a thing to do, contrast, doing hot and cold, Normatex, doing the compression.
I got that.
That was something that was really, dry needling was something that I had really good success with. Cupping, massage. I felt like massage was very helpful for me, just helping me relax. But also certain times it's like, if you have that muscle pushed on, sometimes you need to have it released with cupping or dry needling to get deeper. Kinesio tape was something that I felt was really helpful for just supporting things like maybe tendonitis and overuse injury, just to feel supported in certain areas. But red light therapy really wasn't a thing back when I was competing. So I just kind of used different modalities at different times, and tried to listen. I got to work with some of the physical therapists at the training center. So just kind of worked with them. And
was the cold plunge after or before a workout?
After.
Yeah, it's bad now, right?
Yeah.
I
know, like looking back at it, I'm like, I was at the Olympics and we did a workout in Tokyo and it was so hot out. And I went and just jumped in like this little like cold plunge bath after. And I'm like, that probably was like the worst thing I could have done for my body. But at that point, it was like, they told you after workouts, go do a cold plunge. That's going to be the best thing for you.
Yeah. The guy who talked about like using ice, like I think he retracted it. Yeah. But anyway, good times. Psilocybin. Psilocybin. Yes. Last time I was checking out, it was 7 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. It was illegal here in Colorado. It's legal now?
There are certain providers that do, if they have the right.
Hold on. Let's backtrack. What is psilocybin?
Psilocybin is basically a form of a mushroom, and it can be put into a capsule form. You can take it orally, and essentially, if you take it in a high enough dose, it will cause almost like a trip, essentially, where you are almost in like an alternate reality, maybe. If people you're probably high in that kind of a setting where you're just in a different state. And a lot of, if you are in a guided journey is what they call it, you'll work with a provider and they'll kind of work with you leading up to it to help you find something to focus on. So like, I want to work on more flexibility with my life, being less rigid around food, less rigid around exercise, different things that I wanted to focus on. And so they'd kind of work with you on that. And so when you are in that journey or that trip, they're able to work with you and kind of process through some of this stuff that might come up or that kind of gets released from your body. And then the microdosing is just a much smaller form of that, where you can take it in the capsule and just go along with your daily life. And they'll have different regimens based on what they work with you and figure out what works best.
I was this close. One of my buddies actually, well, he has it, and he grows magic mushrooms, and I was this close to like going with him. And I read all about it, tried to research more about it, and it says it makes your brain more plastic.
Yes.
So that when you try to improve, it's gonna be easier, quote unquote. However, when you got demons that you're dealing with and no one's guiding you, it's going to make you worse. So to those of you who are listening, we're not doctors.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not. You're better off like getting, going to a professional and doing it. Don't just go to Manitou Springs and buy like those mushroom gummies or something like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way of saying it, because it's like, we all have those things that you kind of need to work through. So having a professional that can kind of guide you through that, if it does end up going down that road, is very helpful, because it's like, that can lead to maybe something dangerous. And so I think it's being able to find these different forms of therapy can be really helpful. Because increasing that neuroplasticity for your brain to be able to rewire itself in a way, I mean, that can be huge if it's done properly and done correctly.
Let's go back to your treatment. So can you share a few tactical things that you've done so that, if let's say you're trying to give advice to someone right now, what are some like 2 or 3 like immediate actions that they can take when they decide to start healing?
I would say, I think some of the biggest things that I learned while I was in treatment is a lot of the way you talk to yourself is very important. You can be I think I'm one of my own worst critics. And I think a lot of people, if you are kind of that type A personality, if you're an athlete that likes to improve and get better, sometimes you can be really hard on yourself. And that can be something where that detrimental talk can just drive you down and down and down. And I've had clients that I work with that are constantly talking negative, and I'm like, we've got to change that mentality. And I think for me, that was something of, I don't need to be some positive person that's like, all butterflies and daisies every day, but I also need to work on the way that I talk to myself. Find those things that it's like, I think I struggled even just to love who I was as a person. And I was like, even my accomplishments, I found fault in that. And I always had to like pick something apart. So being able to see myself as a bigger person and see myself as all these different facets. And it's like, one thing that we'd always used to do is kind of have this pie chart, and it's changing. So that pie chart, when I was in the midst of my athletic career, a huge part of that was food and exercise and recovery. And probably like family, friends was a smaller part. And so as the Olympic part of my life closed in the training, other parts of it needed to get bigger. And I wasn't really allowing space for that. And that's always going to be moving and changing. And I think a part of me was like, I need to be okay with that ebb and flow, that there's going to be different seasons of life where, maybe my focus is on my body and my nutrition right now. Or maybe my focus is on my family and my friends. I have a lot of family members maybe going through health issues, or I have a lot of friends that are having kids. It's like, can I be there to support them? Or my job is really busy right now. So there's going to be different times and areas where that's going to change. And I think being flexible with that was a big thing of what I learned, is that there is such a bigger picture in my life than just food and exercise. And I think just between all the providers I worked with and the community and the girls that I met, was being able to trust other people. I think I had my guard up huge. Being a female in athletics, it was like, I'm competing against these girls. My coaches were men. I didn't feel like I could open up and be vulnerable, but that was a space where I could be open. I could be vulnerable. I can talk about this stuff, as hard as it might be. It's better to talk about it than to just sit here and suffer in silence and let this eat away at myself. And I think that helped with a lot of that positive self-talk too, because then I wasn't so in my head. So I would say allowing the vulnerability. And it's like, I'm not telling you to go out and just tell your story to a stranger. You know, find those people that you can trust and that you feel right opening up to, and utilizing that support system that you have. And then knowing that like your seasons of life will change, and being able to accept that sometimes change is good. It's not always a bad thing. And then the first one that I talked about, what was that? I think, yeah, realizing that you're bigger. Yeah, the positive self-talk. Yeah, being able to talk more positively about yourself and be realistic with your goals. Like perfection is something that it's just gonna, I think letting go of the perfectionism for me was a big part of that aspect.
What else? You can think of other tactics.
I think something too was that I've worked with too with a lot of like dietitians and nutritionists is one meal and being able like try not to lose and get super anxious about eating out or having someone else cook for you. Like it's a small piece of the picture, and trying to enjoy that time with other people. Because a lot of times that can get your mental thoughts and all that's going on in your head can take so much away from just being present with someone, and just learning how to kind of be present in that, even if you are a little uncomfortable with the food that's in front of you or that situation that you're in. It's a small piece of that day and a small piece of that week or month. So being able to kind of like zoom out. I think that's a big thing of like zoom out, look at the bigger picture. This isn't everything. The world's not going to collapse just because I had pizza tonight. So I think it's kind of allowing that, almost that 80-20 rule that I'm sure you've heard of like, there's room to live a life. And I mean, there might be a time where you're training for something, you need to be more regimented. That's fine, but still allowing yourself to be human, to not be perfect.
I'm guessing you had to start small.
You're pretty much thrown in with
with
everything. So how it kind of works is breakfast, like certain days of the week, there'd be like certain things. So you kind of got to choose a little bit of what made up your plate for breakfast. That was kind of the one meal a day that you got to choose. Also snacks. So you'd have breakfast, you'd have a snack. Snacks, oftentimes you got to pick what you wanted, but the providers had to like check it off. You had to go and show them, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's a snack one or snack two. So based on like what your nutritionist or your dietitian assessed for your needs, kind of dictated how many. If you needed a snack two, that meant more. So you almost needed almost like a double snack. And then when you went to lunch, everyone basically had the same meal. Some people would have bigger portions. Some people might have like a lunch plus a snack one to kind of add more caloric needs if they needed that. Then you'd have an afternoon snack. You got to choose from that. And then you had dinner, and that was the same. Everyone got the same thing. Unless you had any kind of like allergies or dietary restrictions. Like if I was lactose intolerant, they would have said, okay, just take out the dairy for this, no cheese, or they'd give you like a non-dairy cheese, kind of something like that. And then you'd have an evening snack. So there was a lot of, for me, it was like, this is a lot of food. This is a lot of eating, a lot of different things where it's like, yeah, you don't have control. And it's like a plate of pasta with a piece of chicken on it. I'm like, where are my vegetables? Like, I need vegetables with this. And it's like, like this is what you get. You're going to be fine. You're having one meal that doesn't have vegetables with it. You'll be okay.
Yeah. I imagine because of your situation that it was extreme, that the solution had to be extreme too. Because for us, we tell people like, just add a fruit just for 2 weeks, add a fruit or add a vegetable.
Yeah. Small little changes.
Small little changes. Yeah. But for you, it's different, right? It was different. Yeah. Okay. I've been trying to decide whether I should ask this or not, because you said you couldn't open up to your coach. We might ruffle some feathers, but I think let's go ahead and do it. It's for the greater good. Yeah. So tell me about that relationship. Why weren't you able to open up to him besides him being a guy?
So when I first started with the sport, my first coaches were European. And so I think there's just that language barrier, first off, to begin with. I just felt like it wasn't there wasn't really any open line of communication on like, how did that feel? How are you feeling? There wasn't really any like check-ins or anything like that. It was just kind of, you do the workout. If you had good times, great. If not, it's like when you got told good job by your coach, you're like, oh my God, yes. Like, this is great. I'm doing good. But there really wasn't a whole lot of like checking in and asking like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And I think that that's more with the European style. It's just very rigid and harsh. And there's just not, and maybe that's different. Like I started working with a personal trainer who's like end of my junior year of high school. And if I wouldn't have started working with him, I don't think I would have gotten to where I was. He was so great. He pushed me so hard. Like I've never had anyone push me so hard, but he did it in a way that I felt like he saw me as just more than just an athlete. And I felt like with a lot of those coaches, like they just saw me as that athlete. And so I couldn't really open up. It's like if I was going through some sort of struggle with a boy or school, it's like they didn't really care and they didn't really want to hear about it. Yeah. And so it kind of felt like I was just that athlete to them. And with other coaches I had, it's like, you are still a person. You're still a person outside of that. And so it kind of felt like too, there was kind of in some ways a little bit of toxicity where they were kind of pinning us against the other athletes, like the other girls. It was kind of a competition. And so I think a part of that is like, I don't want to appear weak. And that's partly on me, not on the coaches. I didn't want to seem weak, and I didn't want to seem like I wasn't able to keep up. I wasn't able to stay on that program. I wanted to be there and prove that I could be a part of that Olympic team, or that I could train with them. But also I just don't really feel like there was even that open door policy to have that conversation if anything was going on.
Was that unique to you guys, or is it all over the place in different sports, to you, to the best of your knowledge?
I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I'm sure that there is athletes and coaches that probably still have a relationship like that where that's not really open. I do feel like that's improving. I feel like just mental health has come up a lot more in sports, as we've seen throughout, just different athletes throughout sports opening up about their struggles. So I do feel that that's something that coaches are trying to pay attention to more. And maybe that is just kind of because I do feel, I guess after Rio, we had some coaching changes, and I do feel like there was a little bit more of an open line of communication with my coaches. One was Egyptian, and then one was also a former athlete. He was here in the US. And so I do feel like there was more of that communication, but it was still kind of the walls up kind of barrier. It wasn't really, and part of that might've just been me with that mentality of like, I was in that position before with my other coaches where I felt when I was vulnerable with them that it got turned around to be like, it was used against me almost is what it felt like. Oh. So I didn't feel that opening up, it was like, I'm just going to deal with this myself and figure it out on my own. And clearly I think that's why I had so much drive in me, was because I did take so much stuff internally, but over time it's like that takes a toll on you. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. I think
it's a wake-up call for us coaches, right? To not, when you see an athlete, and especially when they're super talented and then you push them hard, remember to ask how they are, or how they're feeling and stuff like that, or even about life, so that's why, like, here at CrossFit Endemic, we do have, like, one of the things that the owner Clayton talks about is like, when you're coaching them, mention their names. Say their names at least 3 times during the workout. Ask them how they're doing, how's life, and stuff like that. Because you're not just helping them physically, you're helping them in life. So I don't know. That's wild to me that it was like that at the highest level, and hopefully it's getting better. So that being said, though, let's put yourself in a position. Let's say you're a pentathlete coach, and there's a athlete who's like that, a newcomer. How would you set this is for the coaches out there, right? Mm-hmm. How would you set the base for that relationship, just starting out? So when you get a new athlete, what would you say to them so that, down the road they will open up to you?
I think first off, just being able to communicate, hey, I know this can be really hard. You're coming into a new environment. I'm here for you. I have an open door policy. I'd love to set up a meeting where we catch up once a week, at least. I'm open outside of those hours, but like, just know that I am here for you to talk to in private. I think a lot of situations, trying to call out an athlete's weaknesses in front of their entire team can be very hard. An athlete needs to be corrected or told when they're not doing something correctly, but I think that can be done in a productive way. Doesn't feel like you're making them feel like an outsider, or it's like, oh, you don't know this because you're new. Trying to just make them feel welcome. And also maybe setting up not necessarily a separate program, but a program that allows them that capability to come in and feel like they're building up to things, not just like, I'm going to throw you in with the wolves, see if you can keep up. I mean, it's like you want to test that mental resiliency, but also at the same time, you don't want to just have someone fizzle out because you didn't give them the opportunity and you just like threw them into 100% everything. So I think there's that time in that period to like transition and kind of ease them in and just keep that line of communication. Like, hey, how are things going outside of here? And just, I mean, maybe after practice, pull them aside and just check in. How are you feeling? Like, how are you really feeling? Kind of being able to open up that door in a setting where it's like you don't have a ton of people around you. I think that would be kind of that area where I start, and just saying, I'm always here for you. I see you. I see you're working hard. Even adding in those compliments or those little things of like, try not to beat yourself up. Like, you're doing a better job than you think you are. You showed up. You're here. Just kind of even those little things. It's like, that's going to make that 1%. Like, you're showing up. You're doing the right thing. Just keep at it.
Sammy, where can we find you?
So you can find me on my Instagram, Samantha A USA. That's pretty much primarily where I have everything listed. You can find my contact information for personal training, yoga, Pilates. I also do some pop-up events. So if you're looking at trying to just hop in and do some fun stuff in the community, you can find me there.
Heck yeah. Thanks for coming, Sammy.
Thank you.
All right.